there's a lot going on in the network, right? We're trying to move to monetizing the investment in 5G, which is really adding new functions to the mobile network that we didn't have before. And we see a lot of stress being put on the carriers in terms of being able to implement new features like private 5G networks, fixed wireless, turn on slicing. And all of this just adds on to the complexity they're already dealing with. So from a test and measurement vendor standpoint, we're trying to assist our customers in terms of reducing the amount of noise from the systems that are going to them. So using automation, using AI and ML to do things like fault validation, making sure that if we're going to set an alert out to a human or on a dashboard, that it really is an alert. So replicating that fault and then isolating where it is. And when we do provide that notification out to the customer, really defining, what's causing the problem and making sure that we're using as much automation as possible to pinpoint the problem before setting an alert in a dashboard. And of course, we're working towards closed loop. I don't think any carrier is there yet today, but this is a key step in that journey. The key innovation that we're seeing is, by coupling end-to-end monitoring with active network segmentation. And when we look at how things were done in the past, we saw different domains within the carrier network having different and uncorrelated tools that were used for monitoring. So the RAN team would have one set of tools, the backhaul team would have another set, and the mobile core team would have a different set, and they weren't connected together. So this led to, whenever there was a problem, you had these large outage bridges, everybody trying to figure out where the issue was within the network. But especially as we move towards things like private networking, enterprise services, slicing, all of these different domains within the network have to work together. And so by enabling active assurance across that entire set of domains, being able to take a test and run it, the same test from any interface, from end to end over the air to targeting a specific node, it allows us to very quickly pinpoint the issue and remediate it, ideally before customers are even impacted, and really start using some of these next generation tools like machine learning to really, I still see the outage bridge happening, but when we roll into that outage bridge, we already know what network domain is causing the issue, what interface is causing the problem, and we can very quickly move to remediation as we put that together. Really, the next phase that we're seeing and working with our partners and the carriers is the migration to the 5G SA core. I think in a lot of ways, the initial investment in the 5G RAN is kind of complete. And they're now looking at, hey, how do we leverage this infrastructure to deliver new services? And really, that's leading us again towards things like enterprise services and things that are requiring an SLA from the mobile network that we haven't really had to deliver before. As for your comment on, hey, how do we keep up to speed on the market? It's really a relatively easy recipe. You just have to work with the standards bodies, the chip vendors, the device vendors, the RAN and network function vendors, security and application vendors, cloud scalers, systems integrators, and carriers. So joking aside, I think, I feel pretty lucky to work at Spirent and have great partners like Verizon and Accenture. And it's really just working with that ecosystem on a daily basis, from concept to realization. Jefferson mentioned that, kind of the concept of CI/CD, CT, and just following that flow through from an initial concept that we're coming up with all the way through to, making it a realization in the lab, to delivering it and assuring it in the live network. And I kind of see, the test capability as the eyes and ears of these autonomous systems, right? They'll be making changes in the network and they need to see in real time, what was the behavior before the change was made? What was the behavior while I was making the change? And what was the behavior after I made the change? And putting all of that together and automating it is really going to be how we start to achieve levels of autonomy in the network. And I will say that, today carriers are already using AI and ML along with assurance tools to do exactly what Mark said, understand what the baseline of the network is and then detect when changes happen. And then using automation to, kind of segment the network, as Jefferson was talking about, and pick out, okay, a change was made and it impacted this part of the network. And, we've seen that a lot lately. There's been some, relatively large outages and, that affected mobile networks and how folks connected to the network. And they were actually attributed to, routing changes in the network. So just being able to draw those correlations and learn from our mistakes and then put that into automation and algorithms going forward is going to be critical. We started testing 5G back in 2018 in the labs and initial concepts, and it's just making sure that we, continue to follow first principles. Yes, we leverage new tools such as AI and ML, but really the role of testing, we're taking a lot of technology from our cloud scale brethren, right, in terms of cloudifying all of these network functions from the RAN through the core. And we also need to take their methodology around, chaos engineering and active testing in the network throughout all phases to really be that eyes and ears of the network as we move towards orchestration and autonomy.